Takeout is cool, but delivery gets pricey. So, like a phoenix from the ashes, indoor dining is back at Forged Eatery. I use the analogy because the food is fire. It's a new approach to farm to table. No overalls, just dope food. Try my favorites, like the mushroom stew with pine nuts and ricotta, the cornmeal fried happy oysters, and the seared duck breast. Also, ask about the chocolate chip cookie tins. Mini chocolate chip cookies with a dusting of sea salt. Simply delicious. Head on over to forgedeatery.com to check out the current menu options and make a reservation today. Forged is located at 3520 Chestnut Avenue in Hamden. Welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today's guest is director and curator of Whitaker Gallery, Joy Davis. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I like to come in with energy. I've listened to old episodes, and I'm like, I was tired that day.
It's important.
And especially recently, I've been in front of the camera, so I've had to amp up my mannerisms and things like that. So,
oh yes.
So again, I want to thank you for coming on. We talked a little bit before we got started, but I want to thank you for coming on to the podcast. This is, I think this is going to be a treat.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I feel like I'm following in the footsteps of other really awesome people that you've had on the show. So I feel like I have a lot to live up to, but I know that I'm just going to be myself regardless. So, but there's been a lot of really cool people on the show. So if this is your first episode listening, which I doubt, you should go back and listen to some amazing people.
Well, thank you for that endorsement. That's great. It's not like it's a gun or anything in anyone's head. No, appreciate it. So describe your work and the mission of, if there's a mission, because as always seems a little weird. It seems super corporate when you say there's a mission, but describe your work and ultimately what the Whitaker Gallery is about.
Yeah, sure. So Whitaker Gallery, I will describe my work. So I started out as the sole curator and director of the gallery, and we started in 2018. So my work kind of morphs a little bit, and I certainly am improving upon my work as I go. But I curate the exhibitions unless I'm co-working with a artist or another curator, and we're certainly open to collaborating with folks. I also, did a lot of design. There's, I think, a question about art direction, and I never thought of myself as that. But certainly work on the designs and everything like that. And now we've been able to build out to have a volunteer staff, and we've had interns over the years. So shout out to all the interns that have been, I should have their names here. Maybe I'll look them up in a moment. They've been amazing. It's about 4 of them. And they really helped build what we have now. So my role is pretty much everything, exhibition design, the whole thing. So, and one of the reasons for that is because we're pretty small. And especially at the beginning, if not in the intermediary period, galleries don't make a whole lot of money. But that being said, the mission of Whitaker Gallery, one of the really big things for our mission is to make sure that we're allowing space or giving space to the artists we work with. Oftentimes for a myriad of reasons, and I could get into all of them, but there's just so many, artists aren't able to express themselves the way they want to within a space. And so it's a skill we've had to hone over the years to make sure that artists are feeling supported in their work, get to do what they want. And so that's important for us. And the other part of our mission is to be collaborative with the community to seek sort of feedback from them. And the third, which is the most important, is working with Black folk and people of color. So that is extremely important to us. I left the best for last for me. It's really important to me to be supporting these artists from these communities, because oftentimes they don't get to show work. It also happens in the scholarly community. So at certain junctures in our short history so far, we've included scholars of color, and especially Black scholars, I should be more specific, Black scholars in our programming and thinking about our work. So it's very important to me to do that.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I've had had conversations with a few curators about just how, especially we're in February right now, how important it is to have that true representation, to have not only the work of Black creators, but also the fingerprints of the people behind the scenes that are working, because they're there has to be, and this word's been escaping me a lot, but it has to be purposeful as to when one is maybe putting together a exhibition, like, how am I going to arrange this? What's going to be the order? What type of artist? What is going to be the theme there? And
it also depends. So this is the one that everybody forgets, and that is your audience. So who's your audience? Our audience is varied depending on the artist we present in the space. There are other spaces where some people might have different opinions about how the work is arranged or which artists are highlighted. Sometimes that's due to things like racism and bigotry, but sometimes that actually has to do, and based on their audience, just to be honest. And then some of that actually has to do with the audience itself that's coming in, that absorbs the information on the walls, if you will. So it really does depend. And of course, when you get into museums, it becomes even more important. But in galleries too, who's going to be buying? And we have an approach where it's not just about buying, it's about telling the story of the artwork. So, we have to ride a really, really thin line between those two things.
So I'm curious, with the process of selecting artists or artists that you will work with, what kind of traits are you looking for from the artist or from the work?
So that is every question. I feel like I come from a art admin, art historical background. So you always say it depends, which I think is a cop out, but I had to shout out to that very common thing that we all say. But it really does depend. But for us, if artists have come to us with proposals for concepts and ideas for shows, in which we usually co-curate with them. Sure. So that's really exciting, right? Because they already have an idea, it's formulated, and they have a vision. Sometimes we'll see artists and think that they go really well with other artists that we are thinking about. And I'll say me, because since I'm usually making that part of the decision. And so it really, again, does depend. But those are the practical ways. And then sometimes we'll do a call. We did a call in our first year for a show called Strength in Practice. And I believe we had over 17 artists. I think it was over 30, maybe 26 or 30 works of art. And so, I would love to go back to that. It is a very big process to literally process all that artwork and think how they work together on a theme. But it's something we're interested in. So those are the three ways that we interact with artists. And I will say, to be transparent, when we started out in our first year, we didn't necessarily know which artists we wanted to work with in the city, and we were finding our identity as far as who we thought would work well in our space, because it's a very bizarre type of space. It's not just a white box. In some cases it is, I guess, but it's not really that traditional white box. So I worked with some of my friends to begin with, some of them local, some of them national and international, and recommendations from folks. So we immediately tried to break out of that by doing Strength in Practice, but just to be transparent, that's how we started out.
Totally. You start from somewhere and you kind of find it as you're moving along, as how you're going to craft it, how you're going to present things, and really, what are you doing? And that's what it sounded like to me. Mm-hmm. So let's see. Do you have any surprising facts about the Waller Gallery? Just something that just pops up that, someone has I'm uninitiated, I know nothing about the gallery. What's something that's surprising?
The space. We'd love to have you. We have a show. Okay. Well, if it's coming out in February, we have a show open until March 6th called Contextual Exposure. And I'm really excited about it. It's our first show back in the space where we are open to the public by appointment. And so you should definitely come and check that out, Rob. Totally. And if there's a surprising thing, so we live upstairs from our gallery space, which kind of blows people's minds. Some people are like, yeah, that's practical. That makes sense. And then sometimes, so I don't want to make it seem like it's the most surprising thing for some, but for a lot of people, that's surprising that we're able to kind of manage these spaces. And that's a work in progress, but like, that's how our house is set up, our house/gallery. What's another thing that's surprising? Oh, we keep changing our space quite a bit.
Okay.
And we slowly make upgrades. We have been. And hopefully if I come back on the show, or if we stay in touch, I can let you know if we get funding. Because we're planning for funding. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get it, so that we can make even more adjustments and additions and improvements on the space. So sometimes that surprises people, especially people that have come before. There's like, oh, you did the floor different. Oh my gosh, you like did this whole thing, like, so that's fun. And we're mostly doing it ourselves. So that makes it more rewarding for certain. Yeah. Yeah.
It'll be great just when you get that funding, and then you have like a boom room or a lounge or just something to chill in. And it's just like, this is amazing. Where are the cocktails? That's the experience.
I wish we had a liquor license, but we do not. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. A lot of people I wouldn't say requested of me, but they suggested to me that I should open a music venue or a performance venue of some kind. And I immediately thought, just alone the liquor license and security, and really wanting to make sure the space was safe, both like emotionally safe, since I have friends that are queer, friends that are part of the disability community. And so like how to do that. And like, I was like, I don't think I'm actually capable to do this in earnest and complete that mission. So it was like, I think a gallery is more manageable. We do some music on occasion, but it's not, we don't have like shows, but that's a really huge consideration, I think, in 2021 and beyond, is like how to make these venues that, especially if you think about like the Crown or on the other spectrum, like Autobar, and like how you have to create safe spaces. So we're still, again, a work in progress, but I think it would be even harder personally for me, doing a music venue.
No, I agree with you. So let's see. So let's talk about, do you have any pieces like of your own, or that of your own personal collection that are like super valuable or super important to you? And how can I get access? All of them are valuable to me.
I don't know if I've, my collection is weird. I will say this. The reason I cut you off is like, I don't want to talk about like the value of the artwork. I don't know. Some of the artwork is, that I bought early on in some artist's career. Some of them are my friends. So I'm not like a high-end buyer, is what I'll say. Do I have pieces that are kind of worth over $1,000? I don't believe so. I keep it pretty low, but I will say that they're extremely valuable to me, or I wouldn't have purchased them or consumed them or been, some of them are gifts. A couple of them have been gifts. But for the most part, they're things that I collected specifically because I wanted them in my life. And I thought they were not only just important to me, but had something important to say. So
I think I can kind of grab a lot. So I'm thinking of like a cat burglar situation. You kept it vague about the value. I appreciate that, Joy, but also.
Exactly. I don't want people, we're already so exposed because we have an open space, like an open public space in our house. I'm not trying to but there really isn't, I don't want to, and I also don't want to diminish some of these artists. Since buying their work, their prices have definitely gone up. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean the work I have is valuable. And I think that is the allure of the art world, is that you can find that gem that you bought for 15, or you bought at like a print fair for 500 and now it's worth 15,000. But that's not necessarily always the reality of art in the art world, because value fluctuates in the art world almost more aggressively than in like the stock market. So there's, I mean,
that's been recent news.
Like, some top 50s, right?
Okay.
Like your Dutch masters, your like classical and archaeological work, Costa paintings, which is something I study, is definitely like in there, but it's not everybody, I guess. Okay. There's an understanding that if it's 50, it means it's 50,000. And it's like, no, not really. That's not how it works.
So in that vein, this might be hard as I'm reading back over the question, but I still think I could be asked, if you could just add anything, pie in the sky, it could only be one thing now. If you can add anything to your personal collection, what would it be? Like just something that you've seen, though, something that you've seen, because I think that would simplify it, because it's like, yeah, anything.
Simplify it. It makes it kind of harder, because I think it's so hard. It's such a hard decision. And then it's like, and then I have to like name drop. So I don't want to do that. Let me try to find something neutral.
See, I'm coming with the hard hitting questions right now.
So hard. Let's
some of these questions. Oh, okay.
That's a local example. So I'll go local. I feel like that's very neutral, and I really do love her work. It's extraordinary. And it has a story to tell. Not to say, but there's like abstract art that doesn't necessarily have a story, but it has something to say. It's a little bit different. But her work, through her multimedia work, through her print work, through the work she's doing right now and working on currently, I'm just like in awe. And the scale is just, it's like lifelike. And it's of I don't know if you're familiar with her work. I don't want to insult your intelligence here.
Oh no, I can look this up though. I mean,
yeah,
away.
The way that she creates figures and the way that she does on the scale that she does it is extraordinary. And I do think that she could do it in different types of scales and like, are you looking now?
I am. I just did a Google search and I'm just on images and I'm going to keep this up.
Yeah, that is a good neutral. Any artist who I haven't bought from that I've shown is also on that list. And there's a lot of them that I haven't bought yet, because I try to ride that line. But there's who else? McKinley Wallace III is one. Yeah. Ada Pinkston, who we're showing right now. But yeah, anyone that we've shown in the space, if I haven't bought their work, like I've wanted to buy their work. So, yeah, I know that's really neutral, but like if I go far out, like I don't know.
No. That's like a good stamp of approval, because it's like, when people do this kind of endorsement thing, and I think that's where we're at when it comes to, it's not like I like what you do, thumbs up. It's literally I'm endorsing what you do. And, if you're wanting to have someone's work in your gallery and having like, no, I would definitely buy your work too. That's that's a real endorsement. That's a true endorsement. Like that's backed potentially financially and just having it in your space. It's something about having someone's work in your space.
Absolutely. But I would also say that just because I wouldn't buy it doesn't keep me from showing work in the space, because sometimes we'll show work that is different than what the artist is known for, or because they're like exploring a new medium and we want to show them, or they've wanted to share or show, I'm talking about a person in particular, if they're listening, show a certain type of work and they haven't, and they feel like this is the space that they feel comfortable or safe showing this sort of work. So all big compliments that's a huge compliment to me. So it's not always just, I would buy their work, because sometimes people do performance. So it's hard way to buy into that. Of course, a ticket sale doesn't hurt. Or folks that work in digital, but they do print in our space. So it's just, I don't want to make people think that like only people I would buy and therefore is the only valid kind of artwork out there.
Oh, no.
It really is based off of consumer taste and kind of the type of artwork or medium too. So like I said, it's the value of art is so finicky.
Yeah. So outside of where you're outside of Waller and outside of Walters, what are your favorite museums?
Ooh, okay. The Denver Art Museum. I haven't been there in a while, so I don't know if anything's gone wrong over there. I really enjoy that museum a lot. It looks a little bit like an amusement park, a little, but it is definitely a museum that has a really interesting everything from a fashion history museum. They have, I think, their only intact series of Costas in the country, which most people aren't interested in that, but I happen to be. And they have a wonderful kids and education section. I don't have kids myself, but I often think that it's pretty amazing if a museum can pull that off and pull it off well and make kids feel safe in a space and like nurture their growth and development. So that is one. What's another? I used to like SF MoMA. And I like the Chicago Contemporary. I feel like I messed up that name. Let me look it up. Just slandering out here.
I mean, I just call places like, the place I saw that picture. You know, I don't. I'll botch the name sometimes, and I get accused of it. I know it happens.
Yeah, MCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art, Chicago. What else? Who else do I like?
I'm planning an art trip based on your suggestions here, just so you know.
Oh, I can set you an itinerary, but those are like on the top of my favorites.
Because I've been to each one of these cities, and I wasn't dipped into it. Like I was kind of one of those failed art kids, and I was just like, I guess I'll be a podcaster or something. And I really didn't dive too far into it. And like, I want to go back to Chicago. So knowing that, what's the name of that place again? Just so we get it right.
Oh, Chicago.
Yeah.
Museum of Contemporary Art, Chicago.
Thank you. So I can go there and check that out. And definitely Denver. Because like before COVID hit, I was going to, it was two or three museums in like the Nashville area that were on my list. And just because I didn't go, I'm blanking on them. But it's like when I replan that trip to Nashville, I'm going to go back through my emails. And it's like, all right, it's a Black History, like museum there. It's a music museum. There's a bunch of food. So I'm going to do that. But also I just got to get culture too. I think it's important, but I don't think it's a requirement. I grew up going to museums, and really like my parents, especially my mom and my grandmother, were like very much advocates of just exploring art and performance. So art of any medium. And it didn't always have to be go to free days. Like it was never necessarily a class-based assessment. They just knew that isn't necessarily something that's taught in schools predominantly. So that was something that they pushed. So, and I guess it is a little class-based, but I am really excited in the direction that museums are moving now. Whether some folks are kicking and screaming. On the other hand, a lot of people are really pushing for there to be like a flattening kind of class barrier coming into museums. And I think to a certain extent, it'll always exist, but there's something really great about the try, right? Like there's something really fantastic about that, because for a very long time, museums were like, we don't have a problem. As with most actually cultural institutions that are out there. What's another, I'm trying to think of more museums. There's PAM in Miami. Okay, that's a double play right there. And Miami, okay, keep going.
There's a lot of art for folks that don't know. There's a lot of art in Miami, and both galleries and museums, and a lot of really great points of access to different cultures in Miami. One of them being I think it's called the North Miami Museum. The other is, I think it's the Haiti American Museum. Okay. And so there's these other, and they do some pretty great, there's also a bunch of great contemporary art spaces too. There's an ICA in Miami. So there's other ways to engage with contemporary art, but there's just other ways to get culturally immersed and like on a rotation and a rotative schedule to like learn more. So if you go to Miami, I have a lot of suggestions for there.
Noted.
In New York, there's like a lot of them, but when I lived there, I went so often that I couldn't pick one. So I'll just say go to New York.
Go to New York, just enjoy it.
Great. The Museum of the City of New York is great. Those are history based, but they do pretty great work over there at those two places. The Brooklyn Museum, of course. I would say the Met, but I feel like that's just everybody goes to the Met. It doesn't matter if I tell you to go or not.
I'll go to the Met then. I mean, I've never been.
That's like a whole day if you go through the whole museum.
I mean, the closest thing that I had, I went there. I went to, I don't know where the hell I was at. I went to, I guess it was Queens, and then we just got on the train, and it was just pizza and the High Line, and that's literally was my weekend. And it was like during a Puerto Rican Day Parade weekend. And I was like, oh, it's just so much culture. It's overload. But generally for me, like part of any traveling I do, and I think because of like COVID and how like traveling just feels super weird and unsafe for the most part to me. Mm-hmm. I think I'm starving because I've interviewed so many people and learned like just through conversations about, what they're talking about and their suggestions. It's like, I need to go. So yeah. I think like the last like museum I went to was like outside of like locally was probably Geffen Contemporary in like LA.
Oh, wow. I've never been to the Geffen. I've walked past it, but I've never actually been into the Geffen before. So, I mean, I certainly would not call myself a museum head. So I'm like, while I study art history, I'm definitely aware of more museums than I've actually been to. It's like a constant learning when I go into a new museum because I'm like, wow, they did it in this way, because we don't really uplift museums like that. Like we do, but we don't. Like they're not household names unless like a celebrity or a TV show kind of highlights them frequently. Yeah, totally. And so it's not like you have like this consolidated sense of like what these museums look like. And they all kind of look different from one another in a certain sense. Unlike galleries where they kind of, even us having a house gallery, it kind of looks very similar to other house galleries, right? We try to add our own pizzazz, but it does have a similar footprint, right? So it's like visually it looks very similar. But museums, their budgets are ginormous, or even at the time of their inception. So they're kind of these grandiose buildings, and I wouldn't say architectural marvels, but they do kind of house people and stuff, artwork, on a regular basis. So it's like kind of mind-boggling, museums.
So I have a few more questions, and I'll give you back the rest of your evening because, who wants to talk all day?
It's a problem.
So let's see. So I'm going to toss that one out. I'm going to give you the very, very painful Baltimore question. So let's see. What, as a director and a curator, wearing kind of like both of those hats, which skills, like let's say top two on both, which skills do you say that would you say that you rely on the most, and what skills do you feel like you're developing? Like, okay, I could do better there.
Okay, which skills do I rely on the most? A general sense, I will say, of customer service. I guess art direction in a certain sense. Again, a word I didn't put to, but I will use your word here to kind of just pile all of that together.
Sure.
Things to work on. There's a lot that we have left to work on. Our space is not ADA compliant, so that is something that I'm constantly thinking about. We have not always made everyone feel safe in our space. But we've made a lot of people feel safe in our space. So it's an important thing for us to continue to check ourselves on. Like long after we might hear someone say, I had a great moment, you made me feel safe. That doesn't mean that's a monolithic experience. So we always want to make sure that we're making people feel safe in our space. We can't guarantee a safe space, but we can definitely try and continue to do that and improve. Let's see. I would say
I appreciate that. That's an honest answer too.
Oh yeah. I mean, but I think you have to be honest if you're going to constantly be working on it. Yeah. If you're not honest, then you probably don't think it's a problem. Or if someone reframes that narrative for you without you actually knowing the truth or not, then like Are you really changing? Are you like, but there's one other thing that I wanted to, visibility. So like I'm constantly trying to push the artist, but it's a work in progress. And I feel like we have a lot of motivation, and there's a lot of motivation in the art world and in the art field to pay attention to Black artists and artists of color in a way that has not existed before. So many of the gallerists that are currently working or have come before me have really had an uphill battle in establishing the value of Black art and artists of color. I say Black art first because it's been a huge uphill battle, and and it's something we're still working towards. But I just wanted to highlight that because it looks really great now, right? Like you hear about all the auction sales and all of that, but it was truly a lot of hard work by gallerists and dealers and art historians and artists specifically to really build a legacy of Black art in the States specifically. So I can't kind of push past like us having more, it was so much harder even 10 years ago to do that work. And for me to even set up a space where I'm solely focusing on, or at least 95% focusing on Black artists and artists of color. So it's a legacy we want to continue, but I would love to build on that.
Then that just gave me another question then.
Okay.
And this is going to be challenging because I got to ask the question. So with the Black artists, local Black artists, what have you, who are a few that we should just kind of keep an eye on? It's like, all right, this person's got some dope stuff coming soon. This person, they're just knocking out some they're in this great position to have some great stuff coming out. Like who should we have on our radar? And it's not to exclude anyone or forget anyone, but just some names or what have you that come to mind just off the top of your head.
Man, okay. So off the top of my head, and I'm also going to read some of my notes, and we're talking about Black artists here. So I think I've name dropped a few of them already, but I'll rename them. Some of them are in our show right now. So Rebecca Marimutu, for certain, who's in our show at the moment. Ada Pinkston, who, if no one knows who she is, you definitely should by the time that we adjourn this podcast. I've mentioned LaToya Hobbs. I've mentioned McKinley Wallace III. Anything that Abdu Ali touches is basically marvelous. And while they might not do something that's traditionally visual art, it's definitely visual art. So just follow that magnificent person. And they will lead you on a journey of art that you've never known. There's an artist that mostly works in visuals on Instagram called Afro Velvet. And I feel like they are it in a way, or at least in the next couple of years. I think they're really defining their art practice. Who else? LaToya Peebles is a great muralist and does a lot of community-based work. So I think that's exceptional. And we shared...
It might be some Afro Velvet at my girlfriend's house. I believe she bought some work from her recently.
See, already out here. And she's very much connected to the community in a way. Diamond Dixon, also a person that both does visual art, but similar to Abdu Ali, also does community, and she more leans on community-based projects, but anything she touches is pretty great. And there's so many more. I've missed half. And I know that we can't just spend the whole podcast of me naming names, but there's actually even more people that are doing community and art-based work that is just exceptional, because they're figuring out ways in which to give the audience a voice. Shane McCoy has done a series called West Baltimore Ruins, and that is an art project dedicated to West Baltimore. And so there's just so many people doing some great stuff. If people don't know who Devin Allen is, which I don't,
how do you not?
I don't know how you do not. But yeah, he's coming out with, I think, a shoe line now, but he's a photographer by trade. So I think there's so many other people. I mean, I'm still thinking of more names, but I will stop.
maybe I will come up with a way to have like credits, right? And just like, I just need that whole list in there. And it's just me just dictating Devin Allen.
Yes.
Almost like someone's graduating. So here's the last question I have. And again, before I even go to, I want to thank you again for coming onto the pod. This has been a treat. So I'm curious to learn about your take on the Baltimore art scene, just in a very high 3,000 foot kind of view. Like, how would you describe it to someone that's, again, just uninitiated? It's like, oh, Baltimore doesn't have any art. And it's like, oh, let me tell you something.
It's had art since it was one of the jazz hubs. So, I mean, it's been a part of art and performance for such a long time. So that's number one. So put respect on the name. Please do. But I do think that there's been dips and lulls, but there's always been. I know that the artists that have since moved to New York but are from the city have mentioned times in which, especially in the 90s, in the 80s, in the early 2000s, even though we're kind of still there, but in the earlier period of the 21st century, I guess, there was a lot of different movements, especially for Black artists, and they were creating it in themselves. But I will say, being that I was a part of, a predominantly like white art and music scene for a lot, because I didn't understand that Black people were actively being kept out, that that was a problem. But I now see that being turned completely upside down, which is fantastic. And that's due to a lot of labor by Black folks. So that makes me extremely proud to be a part of that community. And it makes me very grateful to them. I feel like I went way off the question, but
no, you didn't. That's a full thought. That's a thought there. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. I really love the city. I really love the art scene, and I'm really, really glad that, it's mostly Black. It's definitely still white. There's definitely still spaces for white artists. There continues to be, but I'm so glad that there are, people pushing against that.
Yeah, and it has to be, I think, not like lip service change of like, we want to do this. It's like, are you doing something that's substantive? Are you doing something that is like meaningful? And
right.
I think that that's a big piece of it, because I heard some really interesting stats on the number of Black curators and the number of percentage of like Black art in galleries and things like that. And I was like, oh, single digits, I hear. And
in the country. Yeah.
Yeah. And seeing that we kind of are like moving against that is great. And I think that needs to be illuminated, because it's a Black city. And I think the art coming out of here needs to be representative of that, just in an equitable sort of way, not just, oh, well, everything is Black that's coming out of there, but in a way that makes sense. If we have a city that's comprised of over 60% and it's like, funding's not going to certain, folks or what have you that are representative of who's in the city.
I don't want to make it seem as though like racism is over. Like, I'm not trying to paint that picture like, oh yeah, it's such a Black, like it's still involved. Yeah. The funding is poor. The collectors are not collecting Black art in the city. And they could be of any race. So I'm not going to call anybody out, but like, it doesn't matter. Like, they aren't going out there and purchasing at a rate that is sustainable and equitable, as to what you were saying. But again, that is changing. It used to be, I think, much worse. Yeah. But that is changing, and more artists are getting visibility, which is important. I think tokenizing happens a lot. Especially in the Black community, but also in people of color. Not to lump them all together. I've just seen this multiple times, especially in gallery representation. They'll have a token POC or a token Black person, like it just on their roster, no others. And that is probably obvious to some in the art world, but I just think it's important to illustrate that there needs to be more of us, more Black folks in the market, and even if they don't buy into the traditional capital A art market, having the visibility to show their work, express themselves in a way they want to, without getting kind of shut out or silenced.
Yeah, it's like in like my realm that I know of, and I'm developing and having taste. It's like I realize I understand art in some ways a little more than an average novice, I suppose, or what have you. Like, oh, I kind of understand what they're going for here, or oh, I see what they did. That's great. That's great technique, technical, and it says something to me. And all of these different things, and it's while still acknowledging I'm a novice. And what I lean into when it comes to like race is always like pop culture, and I still see it, and it's like, oh, representation matters. I was like, you kind of double dipped right there. You have a like person of color, queer. I was like, can't be two people of color. Can't be two Black people. It has to be these different archetypes.
In one person.
Yes. And I just sit there and I lose my mind on it. And it's like,
it's very weird, cool. Right? It's like you're trying to check all the boxes within one person. And I think that's where, I was going to say the idea, but it exists, but the ethnically ambiguous, the tension with being, with people being presented on TV, ads, any sort of media as ethnically ambiguous, because that it's perceived, in most cases, it could be true. It's really hard to tell. That's part of the challenge and the problematic nature of it, right? Is that we don't know the actual intentions of every individual. And it's really frustrating because you're like, it's obviously this. But people are absent-minded in media and in fashion. Yes. I've just learned that. And it's infuriating. It's infuriating. But yeah, that's where that tension comes from. It's because you're trying to check. It's like, why can't everyone kind of just, and also why draw attention to that as a plot point when you really just wanted visibility? It's like, it's very challenging, right? I think anyone that is of a marginalized community, who is Black, POC, or a part of the disability community should have center stage. That is not, I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I just think sometimes it's like, they're not seen as people, they're seen as a prop. And that makes me feel really icky.
Yes.
It makes me feel really icky. It's like, why can't they just have a general storyline? Maybe they can be a fantastic person, or maybe they can just be like a kid going to school. Like, it's just, it's so complicated, but that's outside of the realm of art. It's like media in general that like really is hell bent on like exotifying somebody. You have to.
I want
no choice. It's just.
I want them to exotify chunky Black guys that are super tall and wear glasses, so I can get roles, and then from the inside, I will affect change. But yeah, you talk about representation. I'm like, where the hell am I at? That's true. The only guy I can think of that really does anything that isn't like super big and doesn't have to necessarily manage like their person in the same way, right? Because they're just so rich or they're known. Like I think of Forrest Whitaker, who is like a heavier set man. I think I don't know. People look at me sideways. I think he's kind of an attractive man. That doesn't mean anything, but like I enjoy seeing him on screen. Others, I've seen him used as a prop, is all I'm going to say in some films, I feel. But like he doesn't have to necessarily worry in the same way as someone starting out in the industry, whatever industry that is, media industry. So the only person I can think of is Kev on Stage, who also kind of is a little, I guess, out of the realm of just a general person in media. But like he's very, very open about his like, I think he says he's badly made or something, or poorly made. He says something ridiculous that I don't necessarily agree with. I know he's joking, but I'm just like, but I think he says he's badly made. And he's the only guy that I really know of that doesn't just use it as a joke, is also trying to be like, this is who I am. Yeah. He also makes jokes about it. But yeah, it's definitely a thing. Like heavier set Black men do not get roles. And if they do get roles, it's like a comedy thing, right? Which is fine, right? Again, but then sometimes it gets exotified versus just you being funny and being a person in the role. It's like your body has to also be a part of that joke. We can't help but exotify, and it's just it's exhausting.
is what I'll say.
Then we'll leave on that. I feel like we'll be returning to several other conversations because this has been great. I want to give you an opportunity to shamelessly plug anything. I like to do that with every guest. Plug away.
Okay, so go to wallergallery.com. That's where you'll find all information about the gallery. You can also check us out on Instagram at Waller Gallery, and on Facebook, same thing. Our newest show is Contextual Exposure. It is a great group show between Noelle Puello, Rebecca Marimutu, and Ada Pinkston. And so I want you to check out their work. They have Instagrams. Those should be linked on our Instagram and on our website. And just check out the work and really enjoy their work. I have finished up a lot of projects, most of which I can't either talk about or like they're so far away that like I don't want to talk about them. And they're small projects, but I'm staying active out here. And you should also go and check out the walters.org/events because that's where you'll see my work outside of Waller Gallery and doing events there. So go check those out as well.
There you have it, folks. Check it out. Follow Instagram, all of that good stuff. Yeah. So for Joy Davis, I am Rob Lee saying that there is art in and around Baltimore. Just got to look for it.